What's up, y'all? One of my friends just asked me how we at Bellingham BJJ go about creating curricula for our programs, and I thought I'd talk about this a little. Two things off the top. First of all, this isn't about the lesson plans for day-to-day classes that nest within the curricula. I have thoughts on that too, but we'll go over that another time. Second, all of my curricula are public, and you can see them on the Bellingham BJJ website, both the curriculum for all the belt levels, as well as our rotating currently 12-week curriculum and how we sort of structure that. I'll talk about a little bit about this in the video, but you don't have to do it the way I do it. I just want to give you 5 or 6 principles and a couple of I would suggest, do's and don'ts for when you're thinking about your own curriculum. And the first thing I want to tell you is establish goals. What is your jiu-jitsu for? These days there is not jiu-jitsu anymore. There are jiu-jitsus, and they're for all sorts of different things. Like, we want to have good, well-rounded fundamental jiu-jitsu that works in all situations, for sport, for self-defense, for fitness, life, all that sort of stuff. Gi, no gi, strikes, no strikes, time limits, no time limits, all different rule sets. We want to have good, solid, fundamental jiu-jitsu that works over the long run for people of all ages. Dusty, my basset hound, is very, very interested in this conversation. So as you can see, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, is here to listen. But yeah, so your gym may be a no-gi competition gym, in which case your curricula, the criteria for success for your curricula will be different. You might be an MMA gym, you might be a family martial arts academy. All of these things are things that you should bear in mind when designing your curriculum. Focus on your goals. Do you have broad goals? Do you have narrow goals? Sometimes there will be curricula nested within curricula, which I'll talk about in a second. My second piece of advice is focus on the fundamentals. And I'll say specifically what I mean about that. Everybody defines the fundamentals slightly differently, but I always think the stuff that works in most conditions for most training modalities for most people of most body types, those are things that are the basics that we should return to. If you look at folks that continue to succeed in jiu-jitsu as they age, these are the techniques that those folks usually use. The good, solid, fundamental pressure passing, the good guard, recovery, retention, survival, and escape. These are the things that we can generally agree on, even if we would define the specifics differently. Those are the things that we should continue to focus on. Now, all of jiu-jitsu is vast and interesting and fun and cool, but when you're designing a curriculum, you got to be returning to the fundamentals, because it's the thing that's going to benefit most people. It's going to age the best with people. I did berimbolo for most of my jiu-jitsu career, despite the fact that I was always older. But these days, I don't do it as much, simply because our bodies change and we want our jiu-jitsu to grow with us. Third thing, and this is the first tangible, I think, suggestion I'm going to make: create a curriculum map that you won't know how long it's going to be. You might structure that in terms of weeks. Ours is structured in terms of 12 weeks, but maybe you teach 2 classes a week, and you want to structure it in terms of, okay, I have 10 classes during this time period. What can I do? But you want to create a curriculum map and then budget time accordingly. So what I did is I set a number of weeks, and then we filled in the gaps from there. Like, okay, we're going to spend 3 weeks on guard. Here's the stuff we have to cover. Here's the other stuff. I'm not going to get too much into the specific day-to-day lesson plans, because I have thoughts on that maybe for another video. But generally, think about, okay, what is my jiu-jitsu for? What is a complete grappler going to look like? And if they were to take this curriculum, would they not be lost in any of the common positions? That's sort of how I think about it. And then you set that number of weeks and fill it in accordingly. Now, again, I liken jiu-jitsu teaching to building a pyramid, and the fundamentals are the base of the pyramid. Once you learn the basics, once you have that covered, then you can start to specialize and narrow your focus. And so none of this stuff is ever going to be a solved game, because the composition of your classes is going to change. The people that are coming are going to change. They're going to be interested in different things. And so having a good solid base that hits most of the mark for most of the people most of the time is going to get you most of the way there. And you'll always have to tweak it, because sometimes you have a big no-gi event coming up and you're going to do more things that are legal under that rule set. And we're in that situation right now. But you can kind of, once you set your fundamental curriculum, then you can tweak accordingly. Last couple things. Think of your curriculum as an entry point. Don't feel like you have to be too comprehensive with any given position. You can't show everything there is to know about the back position in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or however much you devote to it. And you shouldn't want your students to be carbon copies of you. That's just not, for one thing, it's not realistic, but also, it's not how the art grows. It's not how people grow and get excited. And so you should teach stuff that is an entry point for them to grab a hold of. Maybe you don't do the truck. Show it anyway. because you don't have to show 18 different setups and entries and different submissions from there. But like I will often say in a class that I'm teaching, hey, I'm going to nod to this here and give you the basics of it. And from that place, we do a lot of flipped classroom stuff where folks study on their own. But like you shouldn't want everybody in your academy to roll just like you. It's not the way that the level changes anyway. And so think of it not as I'm going to teach everything there is to know about the back position in this 10-day period or whatever, but like, okay, here's some upper body control stuff, here's some lower body control stuff, here are some choke submissions, here's some joint lock submissions, here are some transitions, and here are a couple more like other positions that are the back, but you might define it differently, like the truck, you might define the turtle position, stuff like that, and sort of budget your time accordingly for what's going to benefit most of the folks. Last thing, fun is important. And one of the Jake Whitfield's been such a great jiu-jitsu mentor to me, and he told me something that I'm going to tell you, which is I think try and observe the 80-20 rule, which is sometimes stuff is new and exciting and fun and interesting, and maybe it doesn't fit all your other criteria of, okay, this is going to be the best thing for me when I'm 55 years old, right? But it's fun and it's cool and it's interesting and it operates on the new meta, and I'll say more about that in a second. Try and adopt like 80% of that stuff, the stuff that's going to be like really useful always, and then 20% of the stuff that's fun and cool, and that lights the educational fire in people, because you never know what's going to resonate with folks. And like some people are going to look at I don't know, rolling back takes that you don't think are like, oh, that's a rolling back take person, and they're going to take the ball and run with it, and they're going to be better at it than you in 2 years, and that's great. That's the way that progress happens. And so you shouldn't feel like you only have to teach your game and the stuff that you know to an expert level. You can introduce the concepts and then allow them to hang their hat on that hook and then sort of go from there. Last thing, a couple quick warnings. Don't obsess over the current meta. And obviously, if you are running a competition team, you have to pay attention to the current meta and what's the most common techniques and the stuff that people are doing. And you should do that anyway, because that's how the art evolves. Like there was a challenge, there was a response, and so you should pay attention to the current meta, but you shouldn't obsess over it, because I can say many times, like grappling is cyclical and metas change, and stuff that is the new hotness now and is killing everybody may be solved in 5 years, or there may be rule set changes that de-emphasize certain aspects. And so if your focus is we are all about what's hot now, you're always going to be a little bit behind the curve, paradoxically. Obviously this is totally different if you're like, we are a no-gi competition jiu-jitsu school that is interested in the current no-gi competition meta, and that is all we do. Okay, cool, awesome. Obsess about the current meta. But if your focus is a little bit broader, pay attention to it, but don't obsess about it. And finally, the last thing I'll say, don't give in to fundamentalism. I love the fundamentals. I hate fundamentalism. Here's how I define fundamentalism. We should always be open to new information and learning about better ways to do this. Best practices are changing as our understanding of how people learn evolves. And so always be open to that and open to changing your pedagogy. But don't fall into the trap of thinking like, hey, we have just figured out this revolutionary new thing, and in 5 years, everyone is going to be doing this. It might be right, or it might not be right. And someone that says, hey, this is what everyone should be doing, and anybody who doesn't do it my way is stealing money, that person is probably selling something. And, and that's true of all walks of life, not just jiu-jitsu education. Anyway, that's how we think about curriculum. I'm happy to make another video about how we think about day-to-day class teaching if folks are interested. But again, all this stuff is on the website. If you're a premium subscriber to BJJ Mental Models, I put all my curriculum resources in a document for you, and I'm happy to send that out. Or you can just go to bellinghambj.com and look at our frequently asked questions. And yeah, hope it was helpful.